I accidentally bumped into my work crush and caught her. She grinned, "Ooh, I need to fall again." The first time I caught the woman I had secretly loved for almost 2 years, she was falling straight into my arms. It happened in the middle of our office lobby, in front of half the company, with a stack of folders flying through the air and both of us frozen in a moment neither of us could explain. But what she whispered next made my heart stop for an entirely different reason. She looked up at me, still holding onto my shoulders, and with the biggest grin I'd ever seen on her face, she said, "Ooh, I need to fall again." Everyone around us laughed, but I couldn't. Because I knew something they didn't. I had spent 2 years convincing myself that she could never feel the same way about me. If you believe that kindness, patience, and second chances can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories. My name is Daniel, and for most of my adult life, I had become very good at staying invisible. I wasn't shy exactly. I could speak in meetings, handle difficult clients, and even give presentations without my hands shaking. But when it came to Emma, the woman who sat 3 desks away from me, all of that confidence disappeared. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, noticed when someone was having a bad day, and somehow made the most exhausted employee smile before lunchtime. She had dark brown hair that she usually tied loosely behind her head, warm eyes, and a laugh that could travel across the entire office. I had fallen for her quietly, carefully, and completely. The problem was that Emma seemed to belong to a world far away from mine. She was ambitious, confident, and surrounded by people who always seemed to know exactly where they were going. I was still trying to figure out my own life. My father had passed away a few years earlier, leaving behind debts that my mother and I had slowly worked through. I had spent years taking extra shifts, saving every possible dollar, and putting my personal life on hold. Romance felt like something other people had time for. I told myself that loving Emma from a distance was safer than risking the humiliation of hearing her say no. So I became the guy who quietly brought extra coffee when she had a long morning, fixed the jammed printer before she even asked, and stayed late when her department needed help. I never expected anything in return. At least, that's what I told myself. Then one Monday morning, everything changed. The office was preparing for the biggest presentation of the year. Our company had finally secured a meeting with a major client, and Emma had been chosen to lead the presentation. She had been working on it for weeks. On the morning of the meeting, I saw her standing near the conference room, staring at her laptop with a look I had never seen before. She looked terrified. I walked over and asked if she was okay. She smiled automatically and said she was fine, but her fingers were trembling. Without making a big deal of it, I told her that she didn't have to be perfect. She only had to remember that she knew her work better than anyone in that room. I told her that if she forgot a line, she could pause, breathe, and continue. She looked at me for a few seconds as though nobody had ever said something so simple to her. Then she smiled. That smile stayed with me for the rest of the day. The presentation went perfectly. Emma received applause from everyone, including the company's director. But after the meeting, instead of celebrating with the others, she found me in the hallway. She thanked me for what I had said that morning and told me that those few words had kept her from walking out of the conference room. I shrugged it off because I didn't know what else to do. She laughed and said I was terrible at accepting compliments. After that day, something changed between us. She started stopping by my desk more often. Sometimes she had a legitimate work question. Sometimes she didn't. She began sending me ridiculous memes during lunch. We started eating together. She learned that I liked old movies and hated crowded restaurants. I learned that she secretly cried during animated films and always ordered dessert even when she claimed she wasn't hungry. For the first time, I started wondering if maybe I had been wrong about everything. Maybe she wasn't unreachable. Maybe she actually liked being around me. But just when I allowed myself to hope, something happened that brought all my doubts rushing back. One afternoon, I saw Emma leaving the building with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed, and confident. He opened the car door for her, and she smiled as she got inside. I immediately convinced myself he was her boyfriend. That night, I couldn't sleep. I felt ridiculous for being jealous. Emma had never promised me anything. We weren't dating. We weren't even close friends officially. I had simply built an entire relationship inside my imagination and then become heartbroken when reality reminded me that she had a life beyond me. The next morning, I pulled away. I stopped lingering around her desk. I answered her messages politely but briefly. When she asked if something was wrong, I told her I was busy. I thought I was protecting myself. Instead, I hurt her. Over the next week, Emma became quieter. Her usual laughter disappeared. One evening, I stayed late at the office and saw her sitting alone in the conference room. She had her head down, and for a moment I thought she was crying. I almost walked away. Then I remembered all the times she had noticed when I wasn't okay. So I went inside. She looked up and asked why I had been avoiding her. I tried to deny it, but she didn't let me. Finally, I admitted that I had seen her with another man and assumed he was someone important to her. She stared at me for a moment and then burst into laughter. The man was her older brother. He had come to pick her up because her car was being repaired. I felt so embarrassed that I couldn't even look at her. But Emma didn't make fun of me. Instead, she became serious and asked me why it mattered so much. I didn't answer. She stepped closer and told me that sometimes people don't realize how much they matter to someone because they're too afraid to ask. I knew what she was talking about. But I still couldn't say the words. Then came the day of the accident. It was raining heavily that afternoon. Everyone was rushing to leave because the roads were already flooding. I was walking through the lobby carrying a laptop bag and several files when I saw Emma coming around the corner. Neither of us saw the other clearly. We bumped into each other. Her files went flying. Her foot slipped. And before I could think, I reached out and caught her. 1 second later, she was in my arms. Her hands were gripping my shoulders. My arms were around her waist. The entire lobby seemed to disappear. She looked at me. I looked at her. And then she smiled. That mischievous, beautiful smile. She whispered that she needed to fall again. Everyone laughed, but I couldn't move. She slowly stepped back, but she didn't let go of my hand. Then she looked into my eyes and told me something that changed everything. She said she had been trying to get me to notice her for months. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She told me that the coffee I brought her, the printer I fixed, the messages I sent, and the way I always noticed when she was overwhelmed had made her feel cared for in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She admitted that she had liked me long before I realized I liked her. And suddenly, every confusing moment of the past year made sense. The extra lunches. The random messages. The way she always found an excuse to sit beside me. The way she remembered tiny details about my life. She had been falling too. Just much more quietly than I had. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, Emma received an offer from another company. It was a huge opportunity. Better salary. Better position. Everything she had been working toward. When she told me, I smiled and congratulated her. But inside, I felt the same emptiness I had felt when I first saw her with another man. This time, however, I didn't run. I told her I was scared. I told her that I had spent so much time pretending I didn't need anyone that I had forgotten what it felt like to actually want someone in my life. Emma listened. Then she told me she was scared too. She wasn't afraid of the new job. She was afraid that if she left, whatever had started between us would disappear. So we made a decision. We wouldn't promise forever. We wouldn't pretend we knew what the future looked like. We would simply choose each other every day. On her last day at the company, everyone gathered to say goodbye. After the celebration ended, we stood together outside the building while rain tapped softly against the pavement. She looked at me and asked if I remembered the day she fell into my arms. I smiled and told her I could never forget it. She laughed and said she was glad. Then she reached for my hand. This time, there was no accident. No slipping. No falling. She simply chose to hold it. Months later, I realized something important. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly. It looks like someone remembering how you take your coffee. It looks like staying late because you don't want someone to go home alone. It looks like noticing when somebody is pretending to be okay. And sometimes, love is simply having the courage to stop running away from something beautiful because you're afraid it might hurt. Emma and I didn't have a perfect beginning. We had awkward moments, misunderstandings, jealousy, fear, and plenty of reasons to walk away. But we also had patience. We had kindness. And most importantly, we had the courage to tell the truth when silence would have been easier. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that love can grow from friendship, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes a simple story can remind someone that they aren't as alone as they think they are. And before we end, I want you to leave one special comment. I believe in second chances. Because sometimes the person standing beside you isn't waiting for you to become someone better. They're simply waiting for you to realize that you're already worth loving. And sometimes, the greatest love story doesn't begin with a perfect first meeting. Sometimes it begins with two people accidentally bumping into each other. One falling. And the other finally finding the courage to catch her.